Well, who's on first?
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk. Who? The guy on first.
Who?
The guy playing first base.
Who?
The guy on first.
Who is on first?
What are you asking me for? I'm asking you.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Who's on First. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I am Tim Ellebrook. That is Brian Kaplinger and Michael Ramsey. We have a lot to talk about today. We are a week out-ish of the deadline. This will be coming out on Tuesday, July 28th. But we're about a week out. There's a bunch of stuff swirling. There's one big trade that's happened we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the Hall of Fame inductions and everything to do with that. I'm going to give a couple shout-outs to a couple people. So we got a lot of stuff. Let's do it. Before we get started, you guys doing okay? You have a good weekend? Surviving the heat apocalypse? Heat-alypse? I don't know how you say that.
Spending a whole lot of time inside, if that's what you're asking.
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing I went outside for today was to bring the trash back to the back of the house. So that was it. Like, trash can needed to come back.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm staying inside.
Oh, yeah, it's horrible. We had some friends over, and our house got up to about 81 degrees yesterday. And so there was like 8 or 9 people, so I think that was part of it. All the bodies absorbing that, or pushing that heat out, and I was struggling. Almost lost it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. All right, so some really cool stuff's happened this weekend. First thing, shout out to all the Hall of Fame inductees. Joe Buck, I believe Bill White, was that his name, was the other award winner. And then the 3 players that went in was Andrew Jones, Carlos Beltran, and Jeff Kent. All fantastic players.
100%.
Joe Buck obviously is notorious for all of his World Series runs that as a broadcaster and a St. Louis guy, all the infamous calls, the 2016 one for you guys, Michael, and then 2011 calls were electric. And then Andrew Jones, Carlos Beltran, and Jeff Kent. Great players, as I said. I have a question for you guys, though. I thought it'd be kind of fun. If you were to build a new franchise and start a new franchise, out of those 3 players, Andrew Jones, Beltran, and Jeff Kent, who are you drafting to build your organization around?
Man. That's a tough one because my heart screams Andrew Jones because I just love the way the dude played. But honestly, probably Carlos Beltran is the answer because of what he was able to do. Switch hitter, he played multiple positions. Obviously, was able to do, some electric stuff with the bat. And was in my opinion, was an above average defender. Played that well. Like I said, as a former center fielder that did not progress high in the levels of baseball, my heart was with Andrew Jones there. I mean, what a tremendous player he was in his own right. But I think knowing what I know now, I would still go with Beltran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree. I think Jeff Kent, obviously, he's been underrated even getting into the Hall of Fame, but he had a great career. But, yeah, I would agree. It's got to be Beltran. The overall player that was Beltran was the best of the 3, in my opinion.
Man, snubbing Jeff Kent. He's got to be top 3 best second baseman in baseball, right?
I mean, yes. But, you're not like – I don't know that you're necessarily going into the mindset of building your franchise around a second baseman. I think that's the hard part. Like if he played shortstop, which obviously he didn't, there might be some consideration there. And again, it's not to knock him. Dude was arguably one of the better second basemen in the game. Like, I would take the guy on my team in a heartbeat. I'm just not starting a franchise with him when you got the likes of Andrew Jones and Carlos Beltran sitting there.
It's hard to pick against Andrew Jones, which, shout out, he is the only Hall of Famer currently from Curacao. How do you pronounce that? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
So far, he's the only Hall of Famer inducted that was born there. But it's hard to argue against a center fielder, like that position being the cornerstone of your franchise, and he was an elite defender in the 300 home run club, right? Or is it the 400?
He's in the 400,
I believe. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
is he?
Yeah, he's got 434 career home runs.
Wow, I should know that. I'm a terrible host. I think I'm probably picking, I don't know. I'm probably picking Andrew Jones.
You can't go wrong. Honestly, you can't
go wrong with any of them for sure. But congratulations to those guys. It's always, I don't feel like these three surrounded themselves with any controversy. Beltran a little bit with everything in Houston, but I imagine this also means he's probably going to get a job managing at some point now that he's guaranteed to be as a Hall of Famer. But shout out to those guys. All great careers. You couldn't go wrong with any of them, that question. Last thing before we get into the deadline, I want to give a shout out to Salvador Perez. Kansas City is not having a good season at all, and everything is going wrong for them, but old Salvi finally passed up George Brett on the all-time Royals franchise home run list. Hit 318, I think, last week, and finally beat out George Brett. Congrats to him. That's a huge deal.
That is a big deal because Brett's held that record for 30 years, which is also impressive considering that Salvi's played for 15 years of that. So Salvi's great players having a horrible year. Pretty much epitomizes what the Royals look like this year. But it's pretty sweet to see him kind of, because when I think the Royals at this point, it is Salvi. This is the Royals' history, but part of that is also just my youth. Maybe I would think more George Brett if I was a little older, but Salvi's been just a cornerstone there for years. So, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll date myself because I do remember a little bit of the George Brett era. So, it's one of those things that, like, I mean, it's a big accomplishment for Salvi, and so credit to him, one, for the longevity that he has in the game. Michael, I think you said it to a T. It's really unfortunate that he's not having a better year, and probably even more so that the Royals aren't having kind of the year they anticipated, because I think it would have been a little bit more meaningful in that moment. It doesn't take away from the accomplishment in and of itself. But I think he would tell you too, like he would much rather be in the fight for a playoff position, all of that. But it's just not working out. And so maybe the second half of the season, the Royals can really put some attention on him and kind of celebrate him, because chances of him coming back obviously are not there, especially after the season that he's rolling out. I mean, he might be able to come back in some sort of, quote unquote coaching role should they allow him to come back in that capacity, but I don't know if there's much more playing time left in the tank for him after this season.
Yeah, and a big thing for Royals fans too is he said he loves Kansas City. Mm-hmm. You never know how I mean, he's serious when he's saying it. It's not like he's lying out of his teeth, but he's getting paid to be there, so that there's always incentive to love the city. Yeah, love the city you're in. I kind of give him the same vibe for a guy out in Cleveland, taking less money than he probably could have gotten somewhere else because he just wants to stay there. So you would assume that to be true, which means he probably will want to coach at some point, and you can tell that he has that bone in him a little bit too. But I do agree with you. I don't think there's much left in the tank. He got his WBC victory, and I think that probably Miguel Cabrera missed out on that, and I think that's probably one of the things that he wishes that could have happened. But shout out to those guys. Great stories, great careers as well. All right, boys, so big thing that I want to talk about today is we have some interesting streaks happening right now in baseball. Boston went on a 15-game win streak, tied for their franchise record, or tied for the record in franchise history. Almost got the 16, which would have broke it. That run started, I believe, right before the series before the deadline, or the two series before the deadline. I should have wrote that down. Then on the flip side, Miami is on the wrong side of a losing streak of 12 games so far, probably going for 13 today. Out of the two that happened, for you guys, which one surprises you more?
I'm going to say Miami's, just because it seemed like they had finally figured something out, because we're not even talking about the fact that they were on the heels of setting their own team's history record in June for best record in team history with like 20 wins in June.
Right.
So the fact that they just, I don't know, fell off of the face of the earth here in July has been really strange to see. It's the Boston piece. It's like anytime you go on a win streak that long, like it's impressive, obviously, but like we all knew the talent was there. We were really questioning most of the year, like why weren't they putting it together, especially with the way their pitching staff's been pitching. But Miami, like I said, it seemingly looked like they had figured some stuff out. Pitching was doing great, and their pitching's actually still been pretty good from some of their young guys. It's just their hitting is just fell off of a cliff, along with a couple bad starts here and there. So I'd say Miami, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to agree with you as far as which one's more surprising. I mean, I think it's fascinating what Boston did, but given who Boston is and what we kind of expected them to be, the streak doesn't surprise me in that because I knew that team had it in them, especially the way their pitching staff had been going. Once the bats kind of got hot, you expected. Now, I wouldn't have expected 15 straight per se. I was thinking, maybe an 8 run, lose 1 or 2, and then another big run. So it's impressive at 15, but yeah, Miami has just somehow, like, the wheels have come off the bus entirely. Like, they aren't just riding on rims. Like, there's nothing left. They're just coming to a grinding halt out there, and it's sad. Although we say it, bottom of the third, they're up 5-2 right now against Philly. So, maybe it comes to an end tonight. We don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate outside of, maybe Lopez, who's probably the best hitter on that team. I mean, at least this season, arguably has been the best hitter. Everybody else is kind of starting to hit that skid. I mean, you talk about, the big addition from last year, which now his name just jumped out of my head from Baltimore.
Marcy?
No. I can't even,
I'm with you, Brian.
Yeah, it just escaped my mind. He was the left fielder. He got hurt at the beginning of the year. He came back. I mean, he was.
Oh, yeah.
Stowers.
Yeah, Stowers.
Yes,
I was thinking,
yeah,
I had
Kyle
Casey in my
Stowers.
brain.
Yeah, Stowers has not been anything of what they expected him to be. I mean, all the power that he showed last year obviously hadn't been there, and I was ready to mark that a major win for Miami, being able to kind of pull him from Baltimore, thinking Baltimore missed on something, and maybe they were right, because obviously it has not been there for him this year. I mean, hopefully he can figure some things out, but more and more it might look like the Miami Marlins of old, and all the rumors of Sandy getting traded, even some of the others, I think is going to become a reality now, just because when you drop 12 straight, especially in the AL East, when Philly's kind of middling a little bit, Atlanta seems to be back to their steady ways. Even Washington moving up the way that they have moved up, you're falling to 4th. Maybe it's time to go ahead and remove some of those pieces one more year and see if you can't retool a little bit and kind of reset for next year. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't think you could. I mean, both are surprising because it's interesting. Obviously, they're in the far spectrums of each other, but Boston went from the worst team in baseball to just like, oh my gosh, this team is incredible. Now they're kind of playing like we expected them to be before the season started, but they had just been playing so awful that you didn't see it. And then, I mean, Boston went from the bottom of the basement to in the wild card, and Miami went from in a pretty solid wild card spot to just like nowhere near. Now, I mean, they're only a couple games below 500 at this point, or am I? Yeah, there's just 2 games above 500. They were 10 above. Now they're 2 below. I'm more surprised by Miami, for sure. It's hard to believe, but what's funny about it too is they're known for having some of the best pitching in the game, and that's what's blown all of these games and lost all these games. They've been hitting 208 with a 208 batting average and a 607 OPS during this slump, but also they're still scoring a lot of runs, and they're just blowing games on the back end so often. You hate to see it because everybody wanted Miami. They got a lot of young talent, and they kind of started the season off to a poor start, but then like picked it up, put themselves in that picture. And it's like, oh, well, I guess like you said, Brian, they're the Miami team of old. Fun fact about the Boston win streak, they're joining 4 other teams in the 21st century with double-digit win streaks. Obviously, the Cubs have done it, but that's 10 games, so I'm going to use 15 as the low bar. They're joining St. Louis with a 17-game win streak in 2021, Cleveland with a 22-game win streak in 2017, and then Seattle Mariners in 2001 with a 15-game win streak, as well as the 2002 Moneyball Athletics with a 20-game win streak.
Yeah,
that's hard to do.
I would say that Cleveland team in 17 coming back after losing the World Series to the Cubs, I thought that was their year. Like, it looked like that team was building, and like that's when J-Ram was really starting to kind of find his footing in the league, and Lindor obviously was a stud by that point. And it's kind of crazy to think about. Like 15, we just saw that was wildly impressive. They had 22. Like that's just crazy.
Yeah.
So they're tied for second place all time for win streaks. Who do you think? I'm going to give you I'll have you guess the number. What number you think is the highest? It's a team. It's from the 1916.
Oh,
so it's a long time ago.
Yeah. Let's say 35.
I was saying not as high as you think.
I was going to say, well, it's probably the Yankees if it's of all teams, but I'd say like 26.
26 is the number.
Look
Whoa.
at you.
What a guess.
I think he's got it up on his screen back there. Chat GPT for the win.
One of the few things I didn't have.
I'll just play it. I'll play it.
It was actually the 1916 New York Giants.
Okay.
Wrong New York team.
Shout out to those guys, you know.
Should have picked their football team.
Right. Oh, if only. All right, boys, let's move to the trade deadline talk. We got quite a few things. So I guess first let's jump into the big trade that's happened so far. Connolly Early from Boston went to Washington for Curtis Mead. Big picture, easy question. Before we break it down, who do you think won this trade? And then we'll break it down.
I would say Washington. I think personally, I think it was a huge overpay, but I think it's got to be Boston, right? Or Washington.
Am I the arbiter here?
Probably, but we know your love for Boston too, there, Tim. But the reality is I do like in every sense. Like I tried even today when I was like revisiting the trade. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just not seeing something in Mead that maybe Boston is, but it seemed to me like a vast overpay, especially what we had seen out of Early, even the potential that's still tagged with him as a young starter. The only thing that maybe makes it more palatable, I guess, in a sense, is the way that Tolley has performed for Boston, and so maybe they started to kind of just push him up ahead of that as far as Early. And so it becomes a crowded situation. And it's not that you necessarily want to see Early go, but it's the only avenue of where you're going to get someone like Mead from Washington. I still think there were maybe some other opportunities out there for that, but it's just, it's one of those things. I'm still kind of scratching my head a little bit at why it was straight 1-for-1 at least in the names. Like, to me, there should have been at least maybe something else coming from the Nationals, even if it was as simply as like a player to be named later or some additional cash consideration, something of that magnitude. It just seemed quite odd that it's just, hey, we're going to get this done and we're going to move on. Unless, again, Boston is definitely seeing something either on the Mead side that I'm not, or there's something going on with Early that they just haven't disclosed.
Yeah, I would say maybe they just have not realized, given the amount of deals that the Cardinals and the Red Sox did back and forth, maybe they think you have to trade multiple players in multiple different trades. So they're still thinking they're going to get James Wood in another trade with the Nationals.
Blanket statement, I think it's pretty equal. Which I know it's coming from a play. Curtis Mead was released, and couldn't find his footing for the past 4 or 5 years, then having the best season of his career so far. Boston is really overloaded with left-handed starters right now, and you've also got Crochet coming back soon. Connolly early is injured right now. He's got he's on the injured list for elbow inflammation. It's assumed, and I mean, they definitely wouldn't have made this trade without knowing that he's most likely coming back.
Right.
Supposed to be in early to mid-August so far. Boston, they're still trying to replace Alex Bregman, which I think is really funny because they got Caleb Durbin, who's arguably probably the best defensive third baseman, maybe top 3 in baseball right now. Obviously, his bat's been pretty subpar, although he's heating up right now. So they're potentially replacing him with one of the worst third basemen in the market, but they're getting a really good right-handed power bat, which they really need more of. I think short-sighted, Boston wins the trade simply because Boston has 5,000 left-handed starters that are all really good. Long-term, I do agree with you, Michael. I think as long as Connolly Early continues his development track, he's probably a number 3 type of starter. Now they could figure out some stuff with his four-seamer maybe. Have him throw his changeup more. His changeup is his best pitch, and he could maybe get better, jump into that 1 or 2 slot. But it's definitely a long-term play because obviously he's injured right now, so he can't even pitch. And I also think you have to, when you make these trades and you acquire pitchers, you definitely have to bake in injury concerns. Curtis Mead's probably not going to spend as much time on the injured list as a starting pitcher of sorts. But it made sense because again, Boston has 500 left-handed starters that are all pretty good. Peyton Toley's better than Connolly Early.
Yeah,
Crochet's better than Connolly Early. The new guy they just brought up a couple weeks ago was pitching better than him before Connolly got hurt. So I think it makes sense. But in a couple of years, we'll see, because Mead could go to Boston and fall off the face of the earth. But if you look at his profile, he's making really good swing decisions. Top 78 percentile in chase rate, 84 percentile in whiff rate, so he's hitting strikes really well. Bat speed's average-ish. He's just a horrible defender. Do you guys think they put him at second base? I mean, he's a bad defender no matter where you put him. They're not pulling Willie off of first base.
I could see a world in which that happens. I definitely could see a world in which that happens. But it's a confusing move in my opinion, just because, like you said, Durbin is actually starting to hit the ball finally, and like his home run totals are up or are higher for Mead, but like average is about matched. And with the fact that Durbin has actually started hitting the ball, I would assume his home run total is going to start going up now. That's without looking at any advanced metrics on what whether he's a pull hitter or something. Like, he may absolutely rake there at Boston.
Curtis Mead or
Curtis Mead. Yeah, Curtis Mead may just absolutely rake in Boston. And so you may just see a huge disparity all of a sudden in his home run total. But it is a little odd, but I would say second base would probably be a spot to watch him, just given how much Boston gave up in that Milwaukee deal, and it's looking pretty bad with Harrison. And if they immediately just kind of throw Durbin to the side after giving up a high-quality starter like that, and then potentially with Early giving up another starter that could be like I said, top 2 or 3 in your pen in your rotation at some point. That's kind of interesting. But like you said, they may have had some of their decisions made for them just based off of Toley's having an absolutely outstanding year. I don't know. Boston smells the blood in the water there in the East, so they're making some moves, and kudos to them. They're certainly not done, but if this was the only move they make, I would say this is a big time head scratcher. But if they make some other moves, and maybe you overpaid a little bit on this, but you get higher value out of another trade, then we won't be talking if they're in the CS come in October. So
Yeah, I mean, I think for Boston, some of it is with this move too, like you said, Michael, there's got to be something more. I mean, they're rumored to be in the shortstop sweepstakes, so it's like, what does that ultimately mean? I mean, I could see him playing second base. I could see him DHing, especially, as the right-handed power, because that's something that they were looking for in that regard. I don't think this means they necessarily give up on Durbin in the sense at third base, because, again, I think defense does play, but they're looking for offense. I think it's one of those things, blood is in the water, especially when it comes to the Yankees, especially with Bellinger now out 4 to 6 weeks with the hamstring injury that he just suffered. There is a possibility that the Yanks kind of go on a little bit of a free fall here unless their pitching staff holds them in place, and Boston can close the gap all the more, maybe even, surpass on that side of things. So I anticipate, I don't know that they're going to win the James Wood sweepstakes. I mean, I think they're going to be at least in the conversation. An interesting name maybe to kind of watch out for on that side is Zach Neto. Potentially kind of going over and becoming that shortstop, and maybe they kind of take, some of the reign, as crazy as it sounds, take some of the, play style of the Yankees a little bit and not focus so much on the defensive side of the ball, but get a little bit more power in their lineup and start hitting the ball out of the ballpark, because we all know Fenway is conducive for that. And so if they can get Meade hitting, whether he plays second, DHs, or is at third occasionally, I mean, it's a plus for them on that side. Again, it just seemed, when you go back to the trade as a whole, when I look one for one, yes, Meade is having a great year this year, but I don't know that you give up on left-handed starting pitching so quickly without getting a little bit more in return. And it just screams to me that this was the quick, easy way for Boston to get right-handed power. And so they made the move without kind of pushing a little bit more on the Nationals to maybe see if there was something else to be had out of that.
Let me ask you, do you think what warrants Connolly early going one more low-level prospect to get CJ Abrams, like that type of thing? You think he's worth that?
I think so. I think you could, and again, I think you could have pushed the envelope. I'm not saying Washington would have been ready to move, because I think there are going to be a lot more teams in on CJ Abrams than initially. And so maybe what it sounds like to me is the Nationals are going, hey, we're interested and talking to you about Abrams and all of, Meade and some of these others. But if you want Meade now, you're just going to have to make this deal, because you're not, we're going to wait, because we want to see what some of the other offers coming in for Abrams is going to be. Meade, there's not a lot of conversation around. I don't think there were a lot of other teams that were very interested in him. And so Boston was right in the sense of, hey, let's go ahead and get this done, because I think it's, on their side, they at least get a player that they're targeting. Again, I just think maybe you take a couple more days, and maybe the heater that they were on, push the envelope, all of that. We know how it is. Emotions run high, momentum's high, and so you just want to add to this. And so maybe that contributed a little bit, but I think if they were smart, they could have pushed a little bit more. And like I said, even if you don't get a CJ Abrams out of it or a package deal out of it, I think you could have gotten like a player to be named later, or even another potential swing at, a prospect that maybe it hasn't really kind of performed to the level that teams thought he would. But the Nationals would have been willing to say, hey, you know what, we'll throw him in too, and you can see if you can develop this kid.
Maybe. I don't know. They have so many left-handed starters. I think it's just like, yeah, this kid, we've got 5 of them or whatever. Ranger Suarez, Peyton Tolley, Connolly Early, Jake Bennett, Patrick Sandoval is pitching again and starting. Garrett Crochet, that's a 6-man rotation of lefties. So they just have so many. I don't think that's not a valid argument for sure, but I think it's like, hey, we need some more power. Let's get this done right now, and we'll pay for it later, kind of thing. That begs me another question with Boston. They're attached to the shortstop market, the James Wood market as well. What are they going to do with Duran and who's the shortstop player? It's Andrew Trevor Story. If they fill those spots, what do you think?
I mean, it's interesting to me. I mean, obviously Duran's been on the market for the last couple seasons. I mean, even in the off season, I think had he been having a better year, a better season this season, his name would be high at the list. So I think, unfortunately for Boston, he's going to have to be a part of like some sort of package deal this year. But I don't think you hold on to him. I think both him and the Red Sox believe that a change of scenery is going to be the best thing for his career. It's just not working there. And in that, as far as Story, like, he still plays there. So, like, I could see him being a guy that potentially goes to second base to save himself, maybe give him an opportunity to stay a little bit more healthy, or becomes a platoon style. I don't think he goes anywhere. I think it'll be fascinating to see what unfolds because I don't think Willie's going anywhere now. If Boston would have stayed kind of towards the bottom of that division, there would have been some consideration to move him as well, especially with the year that he's having. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of interest, especially not with the contract he has. Not that it's horrible, but I don't think anybody's going to want to pay for a shortstop of Story's caliber, age, and contract. So I think it's going to be one of those things, whether Durbin moves to second and he goes to third a little bit. We see a lot of shortstops do that towards the end of their careers, move over to the third base side where it's just a little bit less wear and tear on your body. You can stay a little bit healthy as long as his bat plays. If not, maybe he becomes that, player off the bench for them. But they are definitely going to need kind of that shortstop that's going to at least move them forward this year and maybe a few years to come.
Of all the teams out there, Boston, the Dodgers, trying to think if there's another one, probably have the best opportunity if Washington is willing to play. The best opportunity to get both C.J. Abrams and James Wood. Like, the amount of prospects that the Dodgers have it's crazy stupid. And we'll talk about it later, but I think they're most likely to sell this offseason just because more than anything they need roster space. They don't need more elite players. They need space to put those players in. And then Boston they're overloaded with pitching prospects. So I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that would be pretty wild for Washington to give that up and not, extend those players because they're in the wild card picture right now.
So you're telling me that Boston made this move in order to try to maybe butter Washington up a bit to be willing to make a deal on Abrams and Wood. I like it. I like that thought process.
They got a lot of pitching.
Well, besides that, they got some other good young players. If we recall, like Marcelo Mayer, whatever that kid's name was, like very good player last year. He just was injured to start this year. And obviously Duran's been an all-star at multiple points in his career. So they've got some pieces some teams definitely I think would be interested in. Obviously Duran's hurt his value quite a bit this year, but they do have some interesting, AAA pro level guys that are pretty much ready to go. So if you put Duran on Washington right now, he may still give him a shot. Now, obviously, they're going to have a huge dip in that offense if they lose both Abrams and Wood. But if let's say you take Abrams out of the picture, but Wood's still there, and you're able to fill that gap with whatever the other piece is that you're bringing in with the trade of Abrams, because if you get fleeced on that deal, you should just stop being a GM. You should be doing the fleecing. If you're Washington right now. So, I would say Boston would definitely have a spot, and then obviously the Dodgers. It probably just depends if they are going all in on Skubal or not, because that's going to be pretty costly prospect wise. But they have enough prospects; they might be able to make both deals. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what scares me the most is if the Dodgers want to, yeah, they could absolutely just go, hey, we're going to go ahead and get Skubal, and then we'll turn around and go ahead and get Wood and Abrams, probably in a package deal where they don't even really send anybody of what I would consider major league ready. But, I mean, the prospects that they have, I think, are near not going to miss unless there's some major injury history that pops up in some capacity. And so for the Nationals, I mean, I get that you're playing really, really well, and I think you have an outside shot at the wild card. It's unfortunate that you do this, but I think the value that you're going to get just out of those two players, especially this year, you can't pass up. It's got me, even as a St. Louis fan, and we can get into this later and deeper. I mean, everybody crucified me for talking about moving on from Ivan Herrera, and now I'm going to get smacked in the face even more because I think there's a little bit of potential, truth to the idea of the shortstop market's moving pretty good right now. I'd at least entertain some offers to see if somebody's willing to overpay for Mason Wynn at this point, because you could potentially get a haul for a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. Now, hear me. I understand it's not easy to replace. And JJ, as great as he is at second base, I don't know that he's the athlete and the superstar at shortstop that he has at second base. But you got a kid in Double-A in Jesus Baez, who is seemingly putting it together, plays shortstop, plays at a high level. I'm not saying he's Mason Wynn defensively, but his offensive profile looks better. And again, that's a prospect. But if you could get something that solidifies your future as a St. Louis Cardinal, I'm at least entertaining that option. And with the plethora of pitching, Bloom already knows. He's already been in contact. I'd at least reach out to Boston and go, hey, look, if this guy were on the table, what are you looking at giving me in return for this guy who's Gold Glove caliber, plays well, he's a right-handed bat that I think will fit with the short porch and left, and maybe you can fleece Boston in that sense because they're primed and ready to win again now because of this win streak.
So at that point, if that trade was made, you're pretty much putting the 2024 Cardinals in Fenway, or the 2025 Cardinals in Fenway this year. So they probably would have won if they were just in a different ballpark.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
No, because the one of the pitchers coming back to you guys would be Sonny Gray, because he's currently the best pitcher on the staff.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
They better hold, like, the way he's pitching for Boston, I know he has value, but they need to hold him, at least ride it out till the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, he's been the best pitcher in your rotation, and you've got 4 other ones that could be aces or number 2s, and then your ace has been hurt for most of the season.
Right.
Yeah. All right. We're going to continue some talking the trade deadline. I'm going to ask you guys some questions and kind of do some fun, like this or that player, who is most likely to be traded type of thing. I'm going to start with some easy ones, and we might get to hard ones, and then we'll probably talk about Mike Trout because I know Brian wants to hit that at some point. I'm going to start with a simple one. Who do you think is more likely to be traded, Kevin Gausman or Dustin May?
I'll go because he's my ginger brother, but it's Dustin May. I for one reason, Dustin May, everybody knew was a rental all year long. Kevin Gausman, I still think there is a world in which the Blue Jays, if they somehow caught steam, and there's people sitting there realizing that Gausman's pitching well enough and Cease has been absolutely lights out. If you can get you Savage, pitching the way he was, late in the year, the AL is not very strong. You don't have to win the division. You just have to get in the playoff picture. If I'm the Blue Jays, there's a world that they're still sitting there going, there's a chance. We were this close to winning the World Series. The Cardinals aren't sitting here going, we're Dustin May away from winning the World Series. No. We have to keep this guy on the roster. They're sitting here going, hey, there's a lot of value in this guy's arm for this trade deadline because a lot of these high-end or higher-end starting pitchers are probably staying put in some of these places that we were not expecting them to stay put because everybody's kind of on a pretty equal playing field currently on both the AL and NL. So some of these guys that we were sitting here going, we're still sitting here with Sandy. We're like, there's a chance he's going, there's a chance he's not, because Miami's been on a 13-game losing streak or something, but they're also sitting here like a game and a half out of the wild card, and they could, very easily turn that around. So, I would say Dustin May is definitely more likely than Gossman, in my opinion.
I mean, if you make me pick one or the other, yes, Dustin May. But honestly, I think they're both gone. Yeah. I think if you're the Blue Jays, you go ahead and capitalize on this. I mean, you're right. You're still in it, but you're 14 games back of your division. You're not playing well outside of, a couple players. Cease has been tremendous for you, and I know it sucks that, you haven't capitalized record-wise or game-wise in that regard, but, get what you can get because it's time to retool. And Gossman, I mean, he's good, but how much longer are you ultimately going to have him anyway? And so I think it's just get what you can get out of it. I mean, Dustin May, you're absolutely right, Michael. Everybody knew day one, as long as he performed somewhat adequate, he didn't even have to be as good as what I think he has been, and he was still going to get traded. I think for St. Louis, you could potentially take a flyer on a minor league pitcher and maybe do kind of a trade in that regard. If I'm Bloom, I'm actually entertaining a couple good young potential relievers that you could flip May for and get that return, because obviously one of our biggest problems is bullpen. We got a couple nice arms out there, and so why not add some depth to that with some young bullpen pieces that hopefully can develop in that regard for a piece like that. Or if you have to package him up with somebody else, like if it's going to be the over the top, you have Lars Nootbaar and Dustin May that get you something legitimate. I think I'm okay with that as well.
They're both going to be gone, in my opinion.
Right.
I set that one up pretty easy. Okay, so the next one, I want you to think, actually realistically, next one is Tarek Skubal or Sandy Alcantara, or both.
Jeez.
I'm going to make you take this one first, Brian.
Okay. I mean, now, given the situation, Alcantara is gone for Miami.
Because of the losing streak?
Yeah, okay. I think he's moved. So I would say if I'm forced to pick, he's gone. I think there's a world in which Detroit, as dumb as they can be, will hold on to Skubal, and he ends up leaving in free agency, and they get nothing out of it because they can fool themselves into thinking that he's going to re-sign with them long term. And so that's where the hesitancy comes from. I think, ultimately, I think in probably, I would say a 70% reality, both are gone. But I can say Sandy is going to be on the move regardless. I think Miami, seeing what has happened with the 12-game losing streak, they know they need to capitalize on him especially. They do have some good younger arms, but they can get some more with moving him. And so for me, he goes first. And then Skubal, I can really see just staying in Detroit, giving them the sweet talk of going, I'm going to re-sign. I'll give you the hometown discount until, LA comes in the picture in the offseason and goes, hey, we'll give you $150 million bajillion dollars and defer it for the rest of your life. And he's like, okay, I'll be in LA.
No, I agree. Like I said, Sandy, is there a world in which the Marlins hold on to him? Yeah, there's a small chance, but they've seen so much from Perez recently, especially. That kid's been shoving. So it's he's clearly moving into more of that ace in that rotation. Plus, he hasn't had 2 Tommy John surgeries, which is also something you have to consider, obviously. And he's younger. Plus, the market, people are going to want starting pitchers more this year than in a lot of years, because you're sitting here, all the top teams in the National League outside of LA, because they already have 400 starting pitchers on their roster, everybody could use another starting pitcher on their team to kind of solidify stuff. So a guy like Sandy would certainly be a nice piece, and may consider overpaying. Skubal is obviously the better pitcher at this point, and if somebody's going to overpay on a pitcher, it will be him. If not, once again, the GM should be fired, because this is about as sure of a thing as a pitcher as you can get at the deadline with what we've seen from Skubal, because you've not only seen this man deliver in the regular season, you've seen him in the playoffs, and he was an absolute dog last year in the playoffs too. So you know this dude will show up when the lights shine bright too. But I agree. There's part of me that thinks Skubal actually would not mind staying in Detroit. Like, I think he likes being up there. Or maybe he's a big fan of AJ Hinch. Maybe he just likes the city, whatever. But at the end of the day, his agent is Scott Boras, and he is not going to let him take a deal for $40 or $50 million less from Detroit than what LA, New York, or one of those teams is going to offer him. That's just the facts of the matter. So if you're asking between those two, yeah, it's probably Sandy. But like Brian said, should Skubal be dealt? Yeah, probably, because the haul you can get back for him could definitely set you up for the future. And if he's really that loyal of a player, he'd come back in free agency anyways, because he'd see the haul that you just made to make the roster so much better by bringing in, all of those Dodger players that, were sitting in the wings that, 20 other rosters would have up in the MLB, but they don't, because they're just basically an all-star roster. But, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Skubal one, I'm really intrigued to see what happens with him, because he should be dealt, but there's definitely a world where Detroit just holds on to him because they just love him, and I get it, but yeah, Chicago had to do it with the Rizzo and Bryant and stuff. Like, sometimes it sucks, and you're going to lose your favorite player on the team, but we don't end up with PCA unless Javi Baez gets traded. So,
yeah, wouldn't that be a great slap in the face? Go ahead and trade him for all these prospects for a half a year, and then he just re-signs with you and has a better team behind him now all of a sudden.
As long as it's not the Cubs, I'd be okay with it. If it's the Cubs, I'd obviously be upset. But if he does that to the Dodgers or Yankees, I'm all for it.
First of all, ain't nobody that loyal except for Jose Ramirez and Mike Trout. But I was going to ask, do you think there's a world? Are the Cubs in the Skubal sweepstakes?
Is there a world? Yes. The move they made today tells me they're more serious about getting legitimate starting pitching than I would have told you before. The fact that they were throwing Jameson Taillon out there and just kept throwing him out there when the guy has been awful all year, I was like, nah. But the fact that they just DFA'd a guy who's been there for 3 or 4 years, has put in some big innings for him and big games for him, tells me that they're more serious on this market. Now, it's going to hurt to get Skubal. If you're the Cubs, it's definitely, if it doesn't include Matt Shaw, it's going to include 2 or 3 of your other top end prospects. So whether the Cubs are willing to make that move, we'll see. But we're seeing their pitching's average right now, and they're still winning a lot of games. So you get a guy like Skubal who can kind of sure things up. Matt Boyd's kind of figured some stuff out. I'd say the Cubs would definitely consider it, but if LA doesn't beat them out, I'd be shocked.
Yeah. It's honestly kind of hard for me to believe Skubal's going to go, mostly because the price tag I think is going to be too high. Unless Detroit gets themselves in a position where, like, okay, hey, this is the best we're going to get and we've got to take it. But, I mean, he's the best starting pitcher that's going to be available, and he's won back-to-back Cy Youngs. Like, he's got a lot of pedigree with the name in general, so I feel like in Detroit's right, it's going to be a high price tag because technically they don't need to sell, just from the point of view that the AL is that bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're 5 games below 500, 5 or 6 games below 500, 6 games below 500. And the AL is that bad, but that means there's that many teams that also think, like, the Twins are 1 game back below 500. So, like, you don't have to be an amazing team. It's a tough position because that's a fan favorite. He's not coming back. In no world is Skubal going to get paid $500 million in Detroit. It's hard to believe that Skubal, I don't know. I have a really tough time with that one, and it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of starting pitchers out there. I do think Sandy Alcantara is probably gone, just because it makes most sense. He comes with some extra control too, so he's going to have a higher price tag. But at the same time, we've been saying that for like 2 or 3 years, and he's still in Miami.
He must like it there too. So
he's the Yandy Diaz of the Marlins.
Right. Okay, a couple more. One good one and one really fun one. Between the two, Hunter Goodman or Ryan Jeffers? Catching's going to be hot on the market.
I mean, if you're telling me, again, if I'm the Twins, I think, and this is the fun thing, like, you're in it, yes, but the value you get from Jeffers is just too great to pass up. And so I think he's moved also. But honestly, I think Goodman goes first if you're looking at it, just because of the nature. I think Colorado's that team that everybody's calling. Everybody is like, hey, what is it going to take? What are you asking? In that regard, especially the teams that are in need of catchers. I mean, yeah, I could see a world, and I'm not saying they will, but I could see a world in where Baltimore gets in the conversation about catchers, and making Adley available to recoup on some of that. And so, when you start to look around, like, I think Houston would potentially make a move for a catcher. Obviously the Yankees are prime in that position there. I think, there's a lot of teams. If I am Minnesota, I'm reaching out to the Yankees, especially with Jeffers, and going, hey, we got a guy here who's a good defender. His bat's going to play in Yankee Stadium. And so, and you get some of that. But, it'll be interesting to watch. But, if I put money on it, I'd say Goodman goes first, just because it's Colorado, and they're going to be probably more willing to move quicker than Minnesota will be. But I think Minnesota will recognize very quickly that, hey, we've got kind of that gem right here that's really going to get us a massive return. And so even if Buxton decides to stay in Minnesota because he loves it there, we can put some pieces around him with this, and they could potentially get some good pitching in return for Jeffers. That way, then it'll allow them to move someone like Joe Ryan as well, and really get and kind of capitalize on that prospect pool. Maybe even that, tier where there's some MLB ready prospects that could play right away.
Yeah, I will say I haven't seen a team do what Minnesota did last year for a very long time. About the only
fire sale
that they did. About the only move I didn't agree with them making, or I guess there's two. Now that we've seen it, they probably should have pulled the trigger on the Joe Ryan trade last year, since Peyton Tolley was going to be in that deal. And then the other piece was firing Rocco Baldelli. I thought he's a really good coach, but I'm just absolutely shocked if both these guys aren't dealt. I agree. Goodman's got to, especially with the way he's hitting right now, he's got to be the first guy. And the market got tighter. I didn't necessarily think that the A's were super high on trading Shea Langoliers away, but obviously that market's now gone. And so the Adley could pivot in there. But Goodman is having a sensational year for him. But we're sitting here in Colorado, still 5 years away from being 5 years away, probably. So there's no reason to hold on to a catcher. It's just they're not any good, and the West is going. LA is going to be there for a while. San Francisco's having a very oddly bad year, but we know they're willing to spend money, so they'll flex themselves back in there if they want to. Padres probably in the weirdest position of any of them. But they may be selling here soon. But and then Arizona, you have they've got a lot of good young talent. They're probably still a couple pieces away. But like if I'm Colorado, looking up at the rest of the West, we're nowhere close to competing right now. So if you don't trade Goodman away, you're just it's just silly. But I would say that they're probably pretty much willing to listen on anybody that's sitting there on the current roster outside of anybody that's maybe a rookie. Outside of that, I'd be willing to listen on everybody. And like you said, Minnesota was willing to make a lot of the moves that a lot of people were sitting here going, wow, I can't believe that they're doing this last year, just because everyone was shocked that they were actually willing to do it. If they don't move Jeffers, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I don't know about Jeffers just simply because I don't know what Minnesota's trying to do. Like, they're in the wild card picture, just because the AL is that bad. They did a fire sale last year. They should not be as good as they are, but they end up being as good as they are. Now, a game over 500 isn't like the most amazing thing in the world, but what are you doing? Are you still needing to load, or are you feel like you're ready? The interesting thing is Jeffers is kind of a part-time player, a part-time catcher. He's only got 46 games to Hunter Goodman's 98 games.
Right.
So it's not like he's going to go out there and play 60, 70 more, including the postseason and everything. Or he could. We just don't know just because he's only played part-time this year. The difference in the games, I mean, games played is a thing, but Jeffers has a 293 average versus Hunter Goodman's 260, but Hunter Goodman's got 31 home runs this year so far, right? I'm not wrong in that. So versus Jeffers' 9 home runs.
Yeah.
So Colorado would be ridiculous to not do something. Plus their GM is the old Moneyball guy, so he knows what he needs to get and go after and everything. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Hunter Goodman's probably going first though, and he's probably the most expensive on the market as well, because that home run total is like Kyle Schwarber.
Now let me ask you this:
behind the dish.
Do you think he's still the most expensive catcher if Adley Rutschman enters the chat?
Yeah, how can he not be? I mean, 31 home runs is incredible.
Yeah, but is this
and
just
a 260 average clip?
Is this just a flash in a pan? Like, we've seen a higher ceiling from Adley Rutschman than what potentially Goodman's ceiling is. But maybe it's not. Maybe this is what this kid's supposed to be. I don't know. I think it would certainly be something to consider. I also don't know what the years of control for the two is. That obviously would factor in as well.
So Goodman starts arbitration next year, and Adley is definitely in the middle of arb right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last year Goodman had 31 home runs in 144 games, and now he's got 31 home runs in 98 games. So he's getting better. 118 WRC plus last year, 124 this year. I mean, a 3.5 to 4 WAR catcher, 3.5 to 5 WAR catcher is pretty amazing. He's not a horrible defender, not a fantastic
not a stellar
defender. Yeah. I don't know. I would think he's more valuable. I mean, he's in Coors Field, so the power's definitely playing better. But like, imagine Boston gets Hunter Goodman in Fenway, and they're linked to catchers too. The Yankees are trying to get everything, and Boston's just taking them all up because their farm systems.
I don't know. I still think the quote of the night is they're 5 years away from being 5 years away.
Yeah.
That's still pretty good. And if I'm the Rockies and I'm listening to that statement right there alone, I'm going, we're selling everything we got. We're pulling a Minnesota Twins here, and everybody's on the move, because I don't care if you got to send out your AAA team for the rest of the Major League season.
Right.
Just go for it at this point.
All right, so one last fun trade question before we move on to the Cardinals and Cubs series coming up. So Philadelphia has been buying outfielders left and right like crazy. Who is most likely to be the next center fielder? Mike Trout or Byron Buxton?
Oh, two of them that don't want to go anywhere. That's a tough one. If I had to pick, and I know you'll understand. I mean, it's Mike Trout, and here's why. Because the new GM that apparently was only going to be there till they found somebody, then he was going to be there for
somebody.
Right, then he was going to be there till the end of the season. And now, well, I might just like this job, so I think I'll stick around for a while. And John Mozeliak now with the Angels, I think gives a better opportunity. I think the home aspect for Trout going back and returning to a place, obviously, that he's fond of in that sense. Obviously, he doesn't know what it's necessarily like playing for the Phillies, as he's been with the Angels for his entire career. I know he loves Anaheim. He loves that area, being in LA. He loves the organization. But I think if he wants a legitimate shot at playing in the postseason, this is something that he's going to have to accept and probably have conversations with Mozeliak and just say, hey, it is time to move me. And I think after last year, hearing what Buxton said about Minnesota in the midst of probably when he should have been traded, and he refused that because he didn't want to go anywhere, I don't know how he can go back from that. I mean, I wouldn't blame him, but you're in the midst of a playoff race, like in Minnesota. So this year it would seem more off if you're Buxton to be willing to waive your no trade than it would have been last year. And so that's why I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be Trout gets moved, and I think Philly would pretty much pay what they had to get him, especially with the resurgence that Trout has had this year, the power that he brings for Philly. I think it would be that, once again, that shot in the arm like Mattingly apparently was for this team to get back on track. Trout's going to do that maybe for that stretch run for them, and maybe they do run down Atlanta for the division if they can pull off something like this.
This is a tough one because Brian, you probably saw it too, but allegedly Byron Buxton has said the one team that he was willing to go to is Philadelphia.
Right.
Now, obviously, Tim and I were kind of talking beforehand that there's some folks, I think he just kind of said that, spur of the moment type thing. But the funny thing is going to be when Trout gets there to Philadelphia, when he realizes this is how a real organization should be running, and he just wasted his entire prime sitting out there in Anaheim for a team that just has never done anything. But he's a Philly boy. He's made it very clear that is a place he would be interested in if he ever left Anaheim. Was Philadelphia is the one place. Now I will say, if I'm Philadelphia, the Buxton piece is pretty interesting because if you look across the board, Buxton's numbers are better this year than Trout's. Even though Trout having a kind of, like you said, a resurged year this year, but you're also gambling on two guys who have a long history of getting hurt. Electric players when they're on the field. I'm just suggesting they pick up both guys, play them, intermittent until the playoffs, and then
platoon two right-handed bats.
Tell one of the two of them they got to go play left field, at some point, or right field, wherever you want to bury them in the outfield, and just give them a little couple extra days off and let them keep hitting, whatnot. But I don't know that you can bet on either one of those guys staying healthy. But if it was me, I hate this because I love both players, and I'd love to see Trout in Philadelphia just from his Philly background. But I'd probably go get Buxton if I were them. But like you said, who knows what that cost is for either one of those guys. It would be really interesting to know Trout's thought process now that Mozeliak's kind of locked in. It seems like there's some kind of clash there. I don't know if he just doesn't like John Mozeliak, or maybe he hasn't heard good things from Paul Goldschmidt and about Mozeliak, or what the case may be there. But it just seems like since he's gotten there, there's just been this really awkward tension between Mozeliak and Trout, and maybe it's just all the cameras and stuff that they're kind of making it seem that way. But if there was ever a time where Trout's finally getting moved, it's this year. And if he doesn't, then Mike Trout's never going to play in probably another playoff, but definitely never a World Series, that's for sure.
In the dugout of the 2023 WBC, it was just all Mo rumors from Arenado and Goldschmidt, and Trout's all like, "What are we doing?"
Yeah, wouldn't it be something if Arenado ends up in Anaheim and Goldie and Trout stays. And it's like, hey, you guys can play together. That's right.
So do you honestly think Trout has a chance to get traded? And will he be?
I from the way that Mozeliak is talking, it sounds, because he is deferred on everything about Mike Trout. It's everybody else he's been willing to talk about, Joe Adele, all these other, Detmers and Soriano and everything. He's been willing to talk on that, but the Trout piece, he's pretty much just shut everything down. He's like, we're not talking about Mike Trout. And to me, that tells me he's been on the phone with Philadelphia, because that's probably Mike Trout's told them that's the only place I'm willing to waive my no trade clause for. And just basically, it's if Philadelphia wants to pay the price. That to me is what that screams. But I think there's a realistic world, because Philadelphia realizes they have a shot. Like their pitching's been really good as a whole. Their hitters have been pretty good. I mean, Brandon Marsh is having a career year this year. So, you're getting production from guys that were basically a zero the last couple of years. Mike Trout, like I said, sitting here going, the Angels they're not interested in winning. Like, we're just not interested in playing winning baseball. So, he's as competitive as a guy as he is, he's got to be sitting there, right? Like, at this point going, I want to go play in the playoffs. I want to go win a World Series, of course, but like just to be back in the atmosphere of the playoffs, nonetheless, like barring something crazy, Philadelphia is definitely going to be in the playoffs. It's not even one of those teams that I'm sitting here going, like, if the Pirates were interested, and obviously, like, if there wasn't this world that he's from Philadelphia, let's say he's from Pittsburgh, maybe there'd be a little bit more like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that they're truly ready to be there. Kind of borderline team. But like Philadelphia, the way they've played since Mattingly's taken over, they're a playoff team, and they're definitely going to be there, barring some crazy tragic injury or something. But I don't know, man. The whole both of those guys, like you said, they may just get to the end of the deadline and be like, both these guys were like, I actually love it here. I love Philadelphia. I'm going to go spend all winter there when it's freezing cold. I just don't want to be there in the summer when the weather's nicer.
Yeah. It puts Philly in an interesting spot, though. Think about it, because now they have an opportunity to go, who's going to take less?
Yep.
How is it going to cost us less to probably get a top-tier center fielder out of the two of them? Because they can pit them against each other in some aspects if they want to move. Now, I think if it's Mozeliak in Minnesota, I think at the end of the day, you hold pat to whatever your asking price is for those guys. Don't cave, even if, let's say Philly comes back and says, well, Minnesota's saying Buxton will only cost us this. You'd be like, well, then you go ahead and go get Mr. Buxton. I'm going to hold on to Mike Trout. Yeah. In that regard. And maybe you convince Trout to move on in the offseason, some other things like that, or another team surfaces that decides they need an outfielder. I mean, God help the Yankees right now. They're dropping like flies with Judge and now Bellinger gone. They need a veteran presence in the outfield. So
no. God doesn't want to help the Yankees at all. One quick thing about that I think that adds on to it is the money involved in the moves of those two. Mike Trout's making like $32 million and Buxton's making less than 20. So there's definitely a weight difference in the contract moves. If Philly's like, hey Mo, we'll take all 32 of that million, he's like, we don't need anybody, go. Like that could that could, I mean, that's not going to happen like that, but that could very well be in play just because the money is so heavy on one side of that contract.
But the one thing you always have to keep in mind when it comes to no trades, it's not just about the teams, but once they sign or relinquish their right to be traded, what that instills for the players is they get to renegotiate their contract going to the new team. That's what the no trade clause really is. It's not so much, you won't go to a team or you're not ever going anywhere. You can agree to go wherever you want to go, or you can agree to drop that no trade clause. But what that indicates to the team that you're going to is you're going to renegotiate what that contract can be. So Mike Trout could come in to Philly and go, hey, I'm willing to work that number down if you add some different things to it. Like, so there's it now, the value has to stay the same. So you're right on that side. Like, it's not just changing the value for Philly, but they might be able to extend it in some ways to where they make it work and it doesn't hurt quite as bad as what it appears on paper right up front. Now, obviously Buxton's is much easier to work with, but Buxton could come in and go, hey, I'll play with you for the rest of the year, but we're changing the contract that I get an opt-out at the end of the year and I can leave and go wherever I want to go.
Back to Minnesota.
And so that's where it gets crazy.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. That kind of like a la Nolan Arenado's contract when he moved from Colorado to St. Louis. It's a good reference and a good point. All right, let's move on. Let's wrap it up with the Cardinals Cubs series coming up. So we are recording Monday. If the game ends up being played, which I haven't seen the weather, but I would imagine it does, this will come out Tuesday and one game will be done. But what are you guys looking at for this series? You know, Michael, are you looking to take and sweep? You looking to just take it? Does it really matter? Brian, for us, what are you looking to see from the Cardinals? Because we're 6 days from the deadline when this comes out, so there's a lot to prove for both of these teams. I think Cubs are obviously in a much better position in the wild card standings, but there's a lot of games to be played for the year to know what your team needs and if they can compete.
Yeah, obviously, I'd love a sweep, but as we talked the last time, like, sweeps are tough to come by in this series, even if the Cardinals are playing pretty poorly currently. I guess the things I'm watching, so Peterson's supposed to be on the bump tonight for the Cubs. He actually has a lot to pitch for, in my opinion, because if the Cubs were willing to DFA Jameson Taillon, they don't have any connection with Peterson at this point. Like, there isn't that, hey, this guy's been around the clubhouse for 3 or 4 years, like, everybody likes him and everything. It's like, we brought you in to pitch. You're not, like, every time we play the Cardinals, you give up 10 runs. We can't handle that because we're going to play them a couple more times this year. So, I'm watching him, but I'm really, more than anything, Boyd and Imanaga are going to be vital pieces when it comes to playoff time for us. We've weathered so many injuries. We have to have those two in lock and step. And so, like, Imanaga has got to make sure he's finding location and not leaving balls across the plate where, Blaze Jordan or someone random just has a crazy game against him or something and hits a couple dongs or something. But, and then Boyd, like I said, he's pitched a lot like he did first half of last year before he got hurt, since he's come back. So it's like, it looks like Boyd of last year has kind of returned to the mound. Love to see it. Imanaga, overall, for most of the year, has actually had a decent year. He's just had a couple of really bad games, which have severely inflated his ERA. So, like I said, we need solid outings from those two. And then who is it besides PCA in this series? It's Ian Happ's gone through a tough stretch again. Obviously, he's got a history versus the Cardinals, but who's going to be the guy that steps up besides PCA in the series to kind of help that offense go? Because obviously PCA did his thing for a while where it's just like, this dude may not be able to be stopped. But he only gets to hit 3, 4, maybe 5 times a game where, if the rest of the roster isn't hitting the ball at all, well, not much one guy can do. Unless he puts the ball out every time and your pitchers hold a team to 1 or 2 runs. So I'm watching, obviously Michael Busch is a guy that I would say is probably a primed candidate to have a nice series in this series. But I would say keep an eye on Dansby Swanson too. He's still, not the same magic he was on, but he's still coming up with some big hits when we need him. I'm really interested to see what the Cardinals do here, whether they actually throw May, because there is a bit of a gamble with May too. May's got a huge history of injuries as well, and do they just shut him down before the deadline to make sure you preserve that guy and his extreme value that he may have, as far as prospects go, or even potential major league relief guys. So I'm really intrigued by this series. I am glad to see that the Cardinals are playing so badly going into the series. maybe there is a shot for a sweep, but it's the Cubs are in a weird spot because if they rally off here, then they got to go play New York and LA, and back-to-back series after this. So 3 pretty big series back to back for Chicago here. So they need to preserve some of those hits. Maybe don't waste them all on St. Louis, but we do always want to pick on the brother down in St. Louis a little bit too. So we'll see what happens. But it should be an interesting series. Like I said, I'm glad St. Louis is playing so poorly. I've said it several times. It's good for baseball when the Cubs and Cardinals are both good, but I wouldn't mind stepping on the throat a little bit this week.
Yeah, be careful, though. When you start picking on the little brother, eventually he catches up in size and starts swinging some haymakers of his own. So,
Jordan Walker.
No, I mean, if I'm speaking as a Cubs fan, obviously I think at the bare minimum you need to split the 4-game series. In that regard, obviously everybody wants to win the series. So 3-1 is what ultimately you're trying to look at if you're the Cubs. I do think it's important to see some of your mainstay pitchers. I don't think Peterson quite so much is a care for the Cubs in that regard. I mean, they would like him to pitch better than, worse, but I think they're poised to go get a couple of starters at the trade deadline regardless of how he performs. You're really looking, like you said, Michael, at Boyd and Imanaga, if they're really going to be those guys you can trust in this stretch run, because you're not necessarily looking at the division right now. You're just looking to cement yourself as a playoff team and then hope you can get on a run that carries you deep into the playoffs. For the Cardinals, I think it's an important series. I mean, regardless of the fact that it's the Cubs, I think you've got to come out and win this. You got to at least win the series 3-1. You haven't won a series since the All-Star break, coming back, and that's been tough to watch. I mean, because you've had series in hand and have blown some big leads in the course of this, and so I think for the Cardinals. I think it cements some players. Like, I'll be interested. If Dustin May doesn't pitch, I think it's a strong indication that there's a good deal that is being lined up. Whether or not it gets pulled that day or not will be up for debate. But if they're getting some serious calls with some good interest, I could see a world in where they pull him and say, hey, we're going to have him skip this start because we don't want to take a chance on anything. Doing that. I think, for me, I think the young guys have to kind of prove it. They've been in a bit of a funk coming out of the All-Star break. So I think, it's time for some others, as crazy as this is going to sound, outside of Jordan Walker to step up a little bit. I need to see JJ kind of do his thing again. Avon looks like he's turning the corner a little bit. Some of the power has started to come back in the last couple games. Is that real or is it not? For Nootbaar in this sense, I don't think he's going to be with the team after the trade deadline. I think he's another guy that's gone. So I'd like to see him have a good series because it may just up his value a little bit, in that regard. But I think if the Cardinals want to make a run for that final wild card spot, like if they want to say, hey, we're really in this to fight, this series becomes big for them because this is a statement series, especially right before the trade deadline. Because I think Bloom's going to do what he's going to do regardless, but there might be a couple players that could sway that slightly if they play well on this, this next series here, this 4-5 game stretch. If they play themselves into position again where they're just kind of neck and neck, it's going to make decisions a little bit harder. And maybe there's someone that hangs around until the offseason that would have been traded at the trade deadline in that regard. I mean, obviously there's some players, Dustin May, Riley O'Brien, JoJo Romero, some of those guys, they're going to be moved regardless. But I think there are some players that again, hate me or not, I think Mason Wynn's name's going to come up. If they continue to play poorly over the next little bit, his name's only going to enhance in the playoff talks. People are going to reach out more about that because you're going to be on the outside looking in versus being right there in the mix. And so I think there are players like that. I think some of these younger prospects' names probably get mentioned a little bit more if they start losing. Like, is it time for someone like Baez, Joshua Baez, that is, to come up and see what he can do? Because just like Jordan Walker, he's proved all he can prove at AAA. I mean, there's not much for him to do now. What does it look like for Bernal? Is he going to be a part of a trade package, or is Crooks going to be the guy that gets moved for a bullpen piece or something of that magnitude? And so I think it's a big series. If Crooks comes out and let's say he plays, 2 of the games in this series and has a big series, all of a sudden you might be willing to say, hey, we're not going to move on from Crooks just yet because we see what he has and we'd like to hold on to him. If he comes out and has kind of been what he's been, I think if he's a needed piece to get something else in a trade, you move on from him and you give Bernal an opportunity in the second half of the season just to see what he is at the major league level. And so that's why I think this series is probably bigger for the Cardinals than it is the Cubs at this point. I think the Cubs want to win it because they want to keep pace and they want to kind of solidify where they're at in the playoff race. But if the Cardinals lose all 4, let's just say there is a sweep that happens, you're almost opening yourself up to fire sale potential because you just need to get return now because this isn't going to be the year. If you go out and you sweep, maybe you put Holt on some of that and you can say, hey, there is reason to keep some of these players versus getting rid of everybody.
Those are all good points. For me with St. Louis, I'm paying attention to a couple players. This offense has been just abysmal since the All-Star break. The entire team's hitting like 50 OPS plus collectively. It's just insane. Ironically, the only two players that are above 100 OPS plus is Walker and Jimmy Crooks. And right. Jimmy Crooks has been a part-time player for some weird reason. I'm really paying attention to JJ. JJ's kind of fallen off a cliff in the last month or so. I mean, it's not out of this world that this kid's getting tired because it's his first season in MLB, and that's a grind that your body doesn't know how to have yet. So I'm paying attention. There's an interesting and really funny stat when JJ scores 2 runs or more, the team is like 8-1. Like they don't lose if he's on base and scores 2 runs or more. So I'm really paying attention. He didn't have a hit the entire Red series. He was 0 for the entire series. That's a big deal. I really trust Herrera and what he did in that Red series, finally getting back on track. And maybe it was moving him to the 4-hole. Weird things happen in baseball, but Church for me is also someone I'm paying attention to. He's like at a negative 20 or negative 40 OPS plus since the beginning of July, I think. So he's just been atrocious. At this point, I don't know, like Victor Scott can't be worse. You know what I mean? Like they're both just awful. So Scott just hit a home run in AAA, so like bring him up. I'm not saying that doesn't really matter. They're not making that swap at all. But I'm also watching Mason Wynn because he's been pretty awful since the All-Star break as well, and like that bat needs to be a little bit better. I'm not expecting, I'm just expecting some average. Like just be the league average for me. Like we need that because everybody else is not hitting. If JJ starts going and Mason Wynn can start going, I think the rest of the team will kind of fall into place a little bit. Our pitching has been pretty stellar. Starting rotation. Starting pitching has been pretty stellar. I'm expecting our bullpen to continually give up games, so it's like I'm just managing my expectations there, but I need to see JJ lock back in and get it back. And is he going to be able to do it? Because we still got 50 plus games to play. Yeah. Is he going to be toast the rest of the season? Because he just got some money and he's got to figure that out. If you ask me, predict a sweep. So this is coming out after the first game. for facing David Peterson. They've destroyed him this season. They've got 2 starts against him. There's a world where I think this team can take 3 out of 4 from the Cubs, just because it's the Cardinals versus the Cubs. And for some reason, this team thinks they're really good when they play them in the last few years. So I don't know. It wouldn't be far-fetched for me for that to happen to either side. I don't think it's a split. I think someone wins the series.
I like
would
that.
be my heavy prediction.
Well, then, I agree with you from the standpoint that the Cardinals could take 3, because if you told me a world in which Peterson gets lit up, Colin Ray gets lit up, and Imanaga gets lit up, I would believe you. Like, definitely. Like, all 3 of those guys. Like, now, at the same time, like, Peterson's had 2 really nice starts for the Cubs since he's been there. One really bad, one against St. Louis. So, obviously we'll see what happens, second time around here. But then, Colin Ray, he's kind of similar. It's like a large portion of the year when he's been starting, he's been pretty decent. You're not going to get elite level stuff from a guy like that, but he's been good enough. But he's had some games where in the 3rd inning you've got to pull him because he's already given up 6 runs or something ridiculous. And then Imanaga, like I said, he has his games where for whatever reason he's not locating his pitches, or he just leaves one across the plate in a bad spot, and all of a sudden you put up 2 or 3 runs on a home run, but he still ends up with 6 or 8 Ks. He has those points. It's just whether he's locked in or not. Those games he's locked in, if you face him in that game and he's finding his spots, St. Louis may not score a run on him. They may not even have a hit on him in 6 innings. But just depends which one of those guys comes out. So like I said, three games from the Cardinals in it, I could see it, but I doubt it. We'll see. Mostly because what you kind of hit on, the offense is not clicking at all for St. Louis. But Jordan Walker may be able to do it by himself. We'll see.
Well, and hey, it's the Cubs. If there's any time for the offense to figure it out, there's nothing like a rivalry game
100%.
that gets you going and gets the juices flowing. And so, I'm hopeful. I mean, obviously, as a Cardinals fan, I want to see nothing more than, at least 3-1. And like I said, it's important for them. I do find it interesting. I think if they can get to the bullpen early tonight, even with the rain delay like it is, man, it's going to be hard for the Cubs to win the series if they have to burn their bullpen early, especially in the first 2 games. You said it. Peterson and Ray, if you get to the bullpen early on both of those guys, it's going to just add a little bit of level for Imanaga to really kind of perform. And I think, Jordan Walker gets Imanaga maybe twice in that game just because it's the lefty-righty matchup.
Yeah. Same goes for the Cubs, to be honest. If they get to the bullpen, our bullpen's already toast. So,
and it doesn't matter when they get to the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, bottom, yeah. I forgot what I was going to say, but I totally had a brain fart, but it was going to be really funny, and that's disappointing.
I'm sorry.
It's really disappointing.
It's on me. Blame me.
That's okay. Well, I guess that wraps it up, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of Who's on First. We really appreciate it. Let us know a couple comments. What do you think of the Hall of Fame inductees? Do you have any memories of any of those 3 players? If you were going to build a franchise around one of those players, which one would you choose? And then if you have any trade deadline predictions, do you really think Mike Trout's finally going to go after 13 years of swimming in Anaheim? But we really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you guys next week.